If you grew up in a world where boredom was actually boring, where you had to knock on doors to find your friends, and where waiting felt like an eternity because there was nothing to scroll through, you might feel out of place in today's hyper-connected world. You've probably been told you're too slow to adapt, too resistant to change, or that you just don't get it. But here's what psychology reveals: you're not behind. You're not broken. You actually possess cognitive advantages that people who grew up with smartphones in their hands are now desperately trying to reclaim. Your brain developed in a fundamentally different environment, and that difference gave you something rare. In this video, we explore the 5 psychological advantages your pre-digital childhood gave you that make your brain work differently from those who grew up constantly connected. If you've ever been called a Luddite, felt frustrated by how distracted everyone seems, or noticed you process information differently than younger generations, you're about to understand why. These aren't weaknesses. They're cognitive superpowers that neuroscience is only now beginning to fully appreciate. You have what psychologists call sustained attention capacity, and it's becoming extraordinarily rare. Here's what's happening in your brain. When you grew up without constant digital stimulation, your prefrontal cortex developed the ability to maintain focus on single tasks for extended periods without needing external rewards or stimulation. Your brain literally wired itself for depth rather than breadth. This might show up as your ability to read an entire book in one sitting, work on a project for hours without checking your phone, or have a 2-hour conversation without feeling the urge to look at a screen. You might notice that colleagues half your age struggle to sit through a meeting without glancing at their devices, while you can stay present and engaged. This isn't just discipline or willpower. Your neural pathways for sustained attention were strengthened during critical developmental windows when your brain was learning how to focus. Psychology calls this deep work capacity, and researchers have found that individuals who developed attention spans before the smartphone era show significantly stronger activation in brain regions associated with concentration and cognitive control. This isn't stubbornness or being old-fashioned. This is a neurological advantage that companies now spend millions trying to help their employees redevelop. Your childhood boredom actually trained your brain to generate its own engagement, making you less dependent on external stimulation to maintain focus. You possess embodied memory systems that create richer, more stable long-term memories. Here's what's happening in your brain when you grew up navigating the physical world without GPS, remembering phone numbers without contact lists, and creating memories without immediately photographing them. Your hippocampus developed stronger encoding mechanisms. Your memories are literally more multisensory and spatially anchored. This might show up as your ability to remember directions after driving somewhere once, recall conversations in detail without recording them, or describe events from decades ago with vivid sensory information. You might find yourself frustrated when others can't remember anything without checking their phones, while you can pull up entire scenes from memory with the smells, sounds, and feelings intact. This isn't just nostalgia or a good memory. Your brain formed memories through direct experience rather than through screens, which research shows creates stronger neural connections in memory consolidation regions. Psychology calls this deep encoding, and neuroscientists have discovered that people who formed their core memories in pre-digital environments show more robust activity in the medial temporal lobe during memory recall. This isn't being stuck in the past. This is having a memory architecture built on lived experience rather than digital documentation, giving you access to richer internal worlds that don't require external devices to access. You have what researchers call intrinsic motivation frameworks that make you less dependent on external validation. Here's what's happening in your brain when you grew up without likes, shares, and immediate feedback loops. Your reward system learned to generate satisfaction from internal sources rather than external approval. Your dopamine pathways developed around accomplishment and mastery rather than social validation metrics. This might show up as your ability to pursue hobbies or projects simply because they interest you, not because they're Instagram-worthy. You might notice you're more comfortable with delayed gratification, working on something for months without needing to post updates or receive constant encouragement. You probably find the constant need for validation exhausting to watch in others. This isn't being antisocial or not caring what others think. Your motivational circuitry was established before social media gamified human interaction, allowing your brain to develop self-generated reward systems. Psychology calls this autonomous motivation, and research consistently shows that individuals whose reward systems matured without digital validation mechanisms demonstrate higher levels of intrinsic goal pursuit and lower susceptibility to social comparison anxiety. This isn't being out of touch. This is having a reward system that doesn't require algorithmic approval to feel satisfied, making you more resilient to the validation-seeking cycles that trap digital natives. You possess what cognitive scientists call unstructured problem-solving abilities that thrive in ambiguity. Here's what's happening in your brain. When you grew up without instant answers from search engines, without tutorials for everything, and without step-by-step guides always available, your brain developed stronger creative problem-solving pathways. Your anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for navigating uncertainty, became exceptionally well developed. This might show up as your comfort with figuring things out through trial and error, your ability to make do with what's available rather than immediately ordering the perfect solution online, or your tolerance for not knowing something right away. You might find yourself actually enjoying the process of working through problems, while others reach for their phones at the first sign of confusion. You've probably been called inefficient for not just Googling it, when actually you're exercising cognitive muscles others have let atrophy. This isn't being stubborn or making things harder than they need to be. Your brain learned to generate solutions rather than retrieve them, developing what researchers call generative cognition. Psychology recognizes this as flexible intelligence, and studies show that individuals who develop problem-solving skills in information-scarce environments demonstrate superior performance on novel tasks that can't be solved through pattern recognition alone. This isn't refusing help or being proud. This is having a brain that can actually create solutions rather than just implement them, making you more adaptable when the answer isn't already online. You have what psychologists call presence capacity, the increasingly rare ability to exist fully in the current moment. Here's what's happening in your brain when you grew up without devices constantly pulling your attention into digital spaces. Your default mode network developed around present moment awareness rather than constant mental task switching. Your brain's resting state actually rests in the here and now. This might show up as your ability to enjoy a meal without photographing it, watch a sunset without thinking about who to tell, or have an experience simply for the experience itself. You might notice that you're more comfortable with silence, more able to sit with your thoughts, and less anxious when you don't have something to do with your hands. You've probably been called boring or asked why you're so quiet, when actually you're experiencing life directly rather than through a lens of how it will be perceived or shared. This isn't missing out or not being engaged. Your consciousness developed a relationship with immediate reality that doesn't require constant documentation or external stimulation. Psychology calls this experiential presence, and neuroscience research reveals that individuals whose brains matured without constant digital interruption show stronger connectivity in regions associated with interoceptive awareness and present moment consciousness. This isn't being disconnected from the world. This is being connected to actual reality in ways that people are now paying thousands of dollars in meditation retreats to try to rediscover. If you've ever felt like you're too slow for this fast-paced digital world or been frustrated by your supposed inability to multitask like everyone else, now you understand what's really happening. The truth is that your pre-digital childhood gave your brain the space to develop cognitive capacities that are now recognized as increasingly precious and rare. You're not behind the curve. You possess sustained attention, embodied memory, intrinsic motivation, creative problem solving, and present moment awareness that others are struggling to reclaim. These aren't relics of the past. They're advantages for navigating an increasingly complex future. Subscribe for more psychology insights that explain who you really are and why your brain works the way it does. You're not adapting slowly. You're protecting something valuable.